lucky enough to have the gregarious Timothy Kaboya presenting on a book that he's read about artificial intelligence. I'm really looking forward to this talk because the book is a combination of facts and storytelling, and I want to hear the insights that are delved from this book. So, without yeah, we can't see your screen, Timothy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Please go ahead, continue.
Oh yeah, I was just introducing you. Yeah, you can take it away when you're ready.
Can you see the presentation screen?
Yes, yes, you
Okay.
can see it now.
Okay, all right. Yeah, thanks for that great introduction. I sure I learned a new word, the gregarious. I don't know what that means. Maybe you'll explain later. But yeah, maybe by a quick quiz before I begin. By a show of hands, who has maybe read this book or seen something about it? Well, just raise your hand if you have. Quick vote. Anyone? Okay. I guess not. Oh, 3 hands. Nice.
3 hands, yeah.
Nice. That will make for an interesting. I'll look forward to hearing your views on the book as we discuss it. Yeah. First of all, thanks to Isho and also Anthony for letting me present this book. Even though it's not technically a paper, I think it's really relevant to where tech is headed, and I found it really interesting. So I'm excited about presenting it, and yeah, I think we can get started and jump into the material. So the plan for today, or rather how it's structured, is that I'm going to give a quick introduction. And by introduction, I mean just giving an overview of the book and why I think it's important. Then there'll be a short slide about the authors. And I picked a couple of chapters, 3 chapters in particular, which I felt are interesting. And we'll be discussing those. And then I'll also touch on the other themes of the book so that maybe those will pique your interest and you want to check the book more. A short aside, for whoever is interested in getting this book, you can actually get it from the library. You can order it from the library and have it delivered here. AK.MS Library, they'll just deliver it, I think, in a week. The other option, you can get a soft copy. I happen to have both. I got the soft copy and then I also got the physical copy. So, yeah. So sometimes when we think about AI, we wonder why it really means. Because many of us, even though we work for a tech company, you find you don't really interact with AI things, AI on a day-to-day basis. So I put this slide because I thought it's interesting and also shows some of the different sides of AI. You have a personal assistant there, say how you have Jarvis in Iron Man. And then also Shuri, one of my favorite stars in Black Panther. She also has an AI companion. You have some pioneering research by, there's a company called Boston Dynamics that does robotics, able to do a robot that can dance. You have a self-driving car. And so why 2041? So one of the reasons so this book actually came out in 2021. In one of the reasons the authors gave, they felt 20 years is actually a realistic bet. So when you look at all these technologies we have, I mean, I think as of last year, ChatGPT has been all the rage. ChatGPT, GPT-3. What do you think of when you extrapolate 20 years from now? When you know it will be just something you can summon, it will be a companion for you. You can ask that, hey, can you explain to me can you explain to me how I can do open heart surgery? And it tells you how you can do that. Or can you assist me in unclogging this pipe, and it can do that. So it's easy to extrapolate. And then on the other hand, it's also far enough to be futuristic. But another reason I also found it interesting is because I have a child, so I'm a father, so I wonder when my children are coming of age, what world will they be in? What world will they be in? So that's one of the things that makes this so interesting is when you wonder, when children who are being born now, when they're teenagers, what time will they be coming into? So I added one of the quotes that I found really interesting also in the introduction. It's by an American research scientist from the 1960s, 70s. He said that we tend to overestimate the effect of a technology in the short run. I like right now how everyone is overestimating the effects of ChatGPT-3, but underestimate the effect in the long run. So even when phones came out, nobody would thought they were going to be this much prevalent. So I really found that interesting. So yeah, about the authors. It's by one of the authors is Kai Fu Lee, who is a research scientist with a PhD from Carnegie Mellon. He's been an executive at Apple, Google, Microsoft. Has managed over, I think, 5 billion in AI investments. So probably somebody who understands the current state of AI. And he partnered with a sci-fi writer to help make the stories more realistic. So this is actually not how the book is structured. Is you have a story that paints a picture of how things are 20 years from now in a particular field, and then after that story, the Kai Fu gives an analysis of where we are right now, what are the current social issues, and where is the technology headed. So anytime if you want to, feel free to ask questions anytime as we proceed. There is no end question time. Anytime one has a question, feel free to ask. So I'm going to now jump into the first chapter. So as I mentioned, we're going to be going through 3 chapter reviews. So the first chapter is a chapter called The Golden Elephant. And in this one, they look at deep learning and its potential strengths and weaknesses. So there is fields that have been penetrated by deep learning, and they mention how I think 10% of the industry or economy, as you know, it actually involves AI, but there are still some low-hanging fruit that actually have not yet, AI has not yet touched, some of which is like the finance industry. So the setting, after analyzing where the current state of the art is, they came up with a scenario of a family living in Mumbai. They get offered this insurance company, this insurance called Ganesh Insurance. I think one thing I found interesting as I was going through this is I put some colours with, there is a Kenyan insurance company, I think the name is GA. GA. Yeah. They actually made an announcement about 2 months ago, that they are no longer insuring certain car models. They made an announcement that they're not insuring, I think, was it Probox, some models of other models of Toyota and Suzuki. So this one was actually an interesting story with this. So Ganesh Insurance is the company think about it as a super app. Like how you have Safaricom, like how you have, so it's a super app that has all these many apps. And when somebody signs up for it, they get offered drastically lower premiums. So, and in this case, you have a family that has a grandmother, a grandfather, the kids, and the wife, and a family with the extended family included. And they all sign up for it. And they get much lower insurance than they can get because Ganesh Insurance, how it's set up, how it does its underwriting is that it, from these apps that they give you, this pile of apps where you have your social media, you have your, you can book, you can get promotions, it knows where you're going, it's able to calculate risk in a real-time basis. I know that because Nanda is going to work at Microsoft. When he leaves Microsoft, he goes home. It's definitely very low risk. So let's give him a lower premium. But then maybe somebody named James or who has to go to Kibera every day, there is some risk there. So that person ends up having a higher premium. And the app, they show us examples of how the AI nudges the family towards not doing risky behaviors, avoid certain parts of town, eat healthy, and an interesting part is on actually over-optimize, and then it discourages one of the teenage daughters from having a relationship with somebody who is from another caste. So that's an interesting, I think, historical bit about India is that they used to have a caste system where some people were in the lower caste and downtrodden, and they still are marginalized. Then you have those who are in higher caste. Normally you have the Brahmins and the Dalits. The Dalits are the lowest, and then the Brahmins, who are priestly, were the highest. Yeah. So the key takeaways for this one is that deep learning tech is at its core, it's an objective function that optimizes for the goals of the platform. So in this case, the end goal is to minimize insurance. Doesn't care what the user wants, doesn't care, it just wants to minimize your premium. And that's at the core of many of the issues we're having with a lot of the stake. And they give examples of, I think there is a documentary, The Social Dilemma, where you have social media apps that have optimized for engagement or time spent online. So they optimize for you to click more, they optimize for you to spend more time as opposed to what you actually want. Yeah. So they also is also a discussion now on what are the possible remedies, what can be done. And in this case, they look at even though the functions are complex, they should maintain fairness. There should be user input in how the function is built. So you as the customer or as the user should have an input. Maybe there should be regulation that penalizes companies when they offend. And then they also talk about AI should be explainable. You should be able to understand how it's giving you, why it's telling you that you should not go to this part of town, or how it's even coming up with that. And there's also suggestion that the same way doctors have what they call a Hippocratic oath that says a doctor should do no harm, AI engineers should also have the same. They should have the same. So this is some of the suggestions. So in case anyone has any question, feel free to just raise your hand as we proceed. I'm just going to move on to the next example, the next chapter. All right, the next chapter is in AI companions. And, maybe I see Shua has a question. You raised your hand?
I'll ask the question after you finish the presentation. It's a long question.
Okay. So the next chapter I found interesting, and this I think is maybe chapter 4. Like I found really interesting. Is one that looks at AI in education and touches at some of the things like ChatGPT and OpenAI and transformers and how they are changing and the potential they have. So in this case, if anyone has seen one of these, the movie called Megan, it's an interesting movie that has an interesting trailer where a child has an AI companion. That's one of the gifts there. But the theme here is that you have this orphanage in South Korea that's funded by an AI company that has the best in class AI tutoring. So you had they talk us to give a story of this couple that decided to retire from their main work, and then they got some funding, and then they're like, okay, they went all in finding the best in class AI tutoring, and they set it up at the school. And what happened is that when kids get at the orphanage, I think from around the age of 6, they are given some virtual reality glasses and some tools where they can now create their AI companion. And typically, this is a companion that the kid chooses based on maybe what's their favorite game. If we have one of the characters chooses from their favorite cartoon character. So like a child chooses maybe Spider-Man, or he chooses Paw Patrol, and then that AI companion plays with them, and then also assists them as they go through nudges them to do their homework, and the AI grows with them. So it's actually like a natural companion. Yeah. And they talk about these two twins who are identical, very identical, but very different in temperament. You have one that automatically embraces the AI as how kids normally embrace new technology. They just dive into maybe he creates all kinds of things, and you have another one who's he doesn't feel embedded with it. He's slowly gears after it, but for him he's more interested in nature and other things. But another interesting thing about this one is that the kids have actually used the AI to create experiences or things they want. Same like how now with say like DALL-E or Stable Diffusion, you can actually create a realistic image. So they use generative AI to create things. They create nature, they create space, they create anything they want. So what are some of the takeaways I got from this chapter? So one of the realities that the AI companions will have in the future will converse regularly in most human languages. I use the word any loosely, but I feel like there will be a time very soon where you'll be able to converse with an AI in Swahili, and it gives you back the responses as well. Because once they learn on more data, they will be able to give something that's plausible and usable. And yeah, self-supervised learning, like how we have ChatGPT-3, is going to open up a new world of AI companions. You have AI companions. And then the other thing it's also discussed is how once you have these companions, you'll be able to have some sort of education where a teacher doesn't have to grade things manually, or rather a teacher can be focused on some of the other things that this tech cannot easily do, such as creativity, teaching kids teamwork, empathy, critical thinking. So if you have maybe a sort of teaching system where a child can learn with those companions, what are the best things they need to learn? So I'll move on to the third chapter. The third chapter I've also found interesting is one called The Holy Driver. And this one, it's about autonomous vehicles. And the setting in this case, it's in Sri Lanka. And you have a world where there's been partial transitions into between human driving and autonomous driving. So autonomous driving in this case being where the car can just pick you up here and drop you at village market on its own with no driver. So there's been a transition in some places. Roads are being upgraded, but there's still some places where you still have people driving normally. And they tell the story from the point of view of a talented gamer called Chamal, who is into VR games. So where you actually get behind a virtual cockpit and you drive, and he's very talented, and he signed up to this new program by a Chinese company that is setting up building roads in Sri Lanka, and he's offered a VR cockpit and told to drive the car. So to him, it looks like a game, but to the company, what they've done is that they've used all these technologies that I have that are available, whereby I mean, by that time there will be lots of the 5G internet will be really good. So there is a car that's somewhere that he is driving, but for him it's a virtual experience. But all his commands, when he shifts gears, when he increases speed, when he all it's after he has learned through some games, he's actually doing it, and it's like you're sitting here in Nairobi and you're driving a car that's in Lagos, on a road in Lagos. Yeah. So yeah, it was a really interesting story, and so in the discussion after, one of the things that I found interesting they mentioned is they talk about there's a society called, I think, Automotive Society of Engineers that has come up with some, I guess you can call it levels of autonomy, whereby you have level 0, which is no automation, where it's the human driving while the AI watches and alerts the driver when deemed appropriate. And we see this in some of even normal fuel cars, whereby there's an AI that can let you know when you're almost bumping into something. There are some cars that actually inform people when maybe they've drunk too much and they can't drive. It has a sense that can tell you that. So there is no automation, but it just lets you know when you're going off course. And then there is hands-on, which is where AI can do a specific task when the person tells it, hey, can you do this? An example of this is, we've seen this with some car models, not even just Tesla, where you get someone, you can tell, hey, can you park there? And the car will park itself. So that's, or can you change lanes? And the car will change lanes. And then there is also hands-off, whereby the car can do many tasks, but it still expects the driver to take over as needed. So as it's still learning. And then there is IO, there is ISO, whereby now the driver can let the car move on its own, but they are still watching, they are still seeing, and they are ready to take over. They are ready to take over the wheel when needed. And then there is L5. Rather, there is L. Mind off. Mind off means in this case the AI can take over, but only in places it understands. Right? So like right now we have cases where they say a Tesla can drive from a place to a place, but that's because it understands those roads. If you drop that Tesla here in Nairobi, you will be confused, right? But we've seen even, you can see online videos of where a car can drive from maybe an office to a place, because those roads are mapped, it knows them, it knows where it's going. Yeah. But the other phone, the one where the steering wheel is optional, is now the final level, whereby you can remove the steering. The car is autonomous on its own. It's able to make decisions. You can ship the car, get it from here, send it to Garissa, and then it will drive on its own and come back and figure out the road as it goes. Yeah. So, and in the discussion, they talk about these different stages and where we are at, and they talk about how we've actually seen level, all the way up to level 4. All the way up to level 4, it's still there, it's existing. Level 5 is where there is a big challenge. And one of the things, I mean, it's a big challenge, training, having a car where it can be comfortable to drive on its own. But one of the things that the author mentions that we actually need to flip the script on this is that you have to, for us to reach level 5, we need to flip the script where now it's not going to be about the driver or the car. It's about the road. So if you have a road that's enabled, that's embedded with sensors, with radar, lidar, and then in that road, it's able to cars are able to communicate easily when they are on it. It changes everything. So what he says is that that is actually what needs to be done. If roads we have currently can be upgraded, then level 5 is a very realistic possibility. Yeah. So yeah, so these are the takeaways. That once you reach level 5, there will be more on-demand transport, kind of how you can use Ubers and move around. There will be much higher safety. It will be safer, because in this case, when you're now doing roads that are optimized for this, it's actually possible for you to do a road and say this road is going to be used by cars and this road will be used by pedestrians only. Because now, in that case, it's also a possibility. And then he also mentions how there are lots of social and ethical issues that still need to be solved. One being what they call the trolley problem. I think it's a fundamental problem when you have a car that it has two options. Either if it drives badly, it will drive into, maybe there's a child here, and then on this other side, you have maybe 2 people. And it has to decide who to eat, where to crash into. So, what's the right decision in that case? Is it the child? Is it the 2 people? What if that child is maybe your daughter or your son? What if, like, there's all these questions, and then there's also accountability for that? Who is responsible? Is it the car? Is it the AI company? There's all those questions. And then there's also possibility of job loss, or maybe what he likes to call it job displacement. Because, yeah, how are we going to contend with millions of jobs being lost, because now you're totally changing and revamping everything. So one of the last things we'll also talk about that I found also interesting, there's a chapter on the chapter that looks at a story called called the Job Savior. I'm not going to talk about it in detail, but I found how he one of the ways it mentions how it looks at AI taking away jobs is that there is things that AI is good at, and there is things that as humans we are good at. And for give you an example, like how we have in that chapter of Golden Elephant, when it comes to insurance, so insurance and underwriting loans, that's a task that AI is far better at than a human underwriter, because it's able to consider all these data points that maybe a loan underwriter might have. It might have like only four factors that they're looking at. You know, what is your past record, what is what, but then it's able to take in all this data. So there are tasks that it's better at. And one of the things it says AI continually struggling on is one, creativity, empathy, and dexterity. Dexterity meaning the ability to do very refined tasks, and then also being empathetic. It will never be empathetic. And then also creativity. And as we're discussing that, it talks about two things. One, cognitive jobs. There's cognitive jobs that AI is more suited for. And some of the examples he gives, he talks about how being, looking at this, how those which are in the lower right, there are things which AI is more suited for, like matching resumes, loan officer, insurance underwriter. AI is much better at this. But then there are tasks that it will never really be helpful on. For example, mergers and acquisitions expert. How do you merge two companies? How do you go through that complexity? That's something that a human can easily figure out with little data that will always struggle on, because there is no amount of data that can help. Yeah. So for the cognitive jobs which require thinking and analysis, it looks at it from the social aspect to social, then creative to routine. Then it also looks at now the physical jobs. There are physical jobs which AI is better at, and I think some of these have actually already gone. Some like within factories. We find most factories, I did say big manufacturing factories, most cars are manufactured by robots. They're not humans. They're human. There are very few people manually putting together parts of cars. Yeah, but there are things which, even though they are physical, it's definitely, however much it improves in 20 years, it will never be good for that. So, yeah, so some of the other chapters and things which I explored, I touch on this briefly here, and whoever goes on to read the book will check them out. So one is a chapter that looks at deep fakes, creating deep fakes. I think this one actually had the setting somewhere in Lagos. Yeah, deep fakes and adversarial networks. I'm actually not familiar with adversarial networks, but it was an interesting read how it's possible to generate deep fakes, maybe generating a video of the president saying something, and then how do you actually verify that it's true versus if it's not true, because it will be hard for the public. So imagine a future where now it's possible for anybody to generate a deep fake video. What is real and what is not. And then there's also AI in healthcare, looking at healthcare, robotics, and then also relationships which across, we talk about a couple where the girl stays in China and the boyfriend is in Brazil, how that relationship would work. Yeah, and then there's also look at quantum computing and some of the recent advances in that. What do they mean for security? Will you still be able to secure application using the normal HTTPS, and then you are sure that this banking app is okay? Or what are other ways that security can be done when that feature comes? Yeah. And then there's a chapter that flew over my head concerning happiness. How AI can be used to optimize for happiness. And yeah, I just looked at, I think, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. What are somebody's needs? How do you progressively increase those needs? And how can that be built in? Yeah. And all you know, these are here the conclusion I took from the book. I tried to put together what I found is there's a lot that can change in 20 years. The world will be in 20 years, there will be a lot that will have changed. But on the other hand, in as much there is so much high-end technology that's out there, it's not yet mainstream yet. It hasn't had its impact. I mean, even if we talk about the ChatGPT, it's not yet mainstream yet. It's not yet out there like how you have a situation now where everybody has actually not everybody has a smartphone. Many people have smartphones, but even those have not yet perforated to so many people. Yeah. And there are also very wide ethical, social, regulatory issues that need to be overcome for any of this to be applicable in just one country before you even start thinking of can it be applied to 3 countries too, but how can it be, how can this be? And then also the other thing I realized that actually the barriers to adoption will not be technical. It's not going to be technical, it'll be actually ethical, social, and real life issues that you and I face, as opposed to it being something in somebody's code or the logic that is not working right. Yeah. So yeah.
Wow. Thank you so much, Timothy. That was an amazing presentation. And at this point, I will welcome questions, and I'll start with mine. You mentioned that AI practitioners should actually have a Hippocratic oath like doctors. For doctors at this point, you need a license to operate within a specific region. Would this now actually mean that anyone who wants to practice AI or any field related to AI has to be certified in to practice in a specific region, or is it do you envision that it's going to be a global thing or it's going to be region based, and how would it work?
Yeah, I think how it would work, it's hard to say how it would work, but I think the goal here in how the author was mentioning it is that at the end of the day, the responsibility should come back to the person who's creating it. So the same way, if you have, like how you have a building that collapses, who takes up responsibility for that? So that's how I was looking at it. And one of the things that's clear this for doctors, even aside looking at putting aside the licensing and what, is that concept of you should do no harm that comes from the Hippocratic oath. So can there be something similar like that? So that even though as an engineer you work for this tech company, or there is that moral code or that set of ethics that that one still has to abide by.
Yeah.
In addition, it is not from the book, but there is something it is a talk I was listening to about. They were just talking about like safety in software, and they were saying right now it's not really heavily regulated. Some industries are a little bit like when those who build like these machines that are used in medical devices. They have some like FCC, for example, has to clear some things. There's a little bit of some documentation, but what the presenter was saying was that it can just take one serious accident that maybe will harm some people and many people, and then it means who will take over? The guys who take over will be now politicians. In the Senate, in the whatever parliament, they'll pass now very serious laws. And they don't know even, they don't have any background, they'll just be reacting. So he was just telling like software guys, we should be very careful. Like once politicians get into this field and they'll just be reactive and they say, maybe you have to have like a master's degree in this before you can even code and then IOD, then you have to produce this kind of paperwork, pages and pages of paperwork before something gets out. So it's a related thing.
Oh, Abdul, you have a question?
Okay, so I want to add on to the last point, just a thought. Would there be like an ISO certification for AI ethics? So that's my thought. But my actual question is, you've described a lot about how um, AI can change the world, but does the book go into how AI can change human behavior? Because in that description of the insurance, the insurance section you're giving, you're talking about how AI can guide people away from high risk places. But what if it becomes a negative feedback loop where we teach the AI to make us behave in a certain way, and we behave in a certain way, and that uh, pushes human behavior, like a circle like that. Uh, does the book cover any of those ideas? How we as humans might evolve going forward?
Mhm. I think it doesn't try to answer the question of humans evolving this and this, but more looks at it from the point of view of here's a particular use case. Here's a particular use case of, say, an insurance company that optimizes for lower premiums. How would it change your behavior? What things would it consider to say this is risky? And these are the examples they give, like, okay, here are behaviors that are considered less risky. For example, one of the children in that family was I think a 7-year-old boy who was chubby and used to eat a lot of fast food, but the AI was able to kind of try to nudge him away from that. And as a family, they were very surprised because that was something they had failed to do. So it's what it shows is more of the risk. Okay. The risk of, at the end of the day, a lot of the tech is going to optimize for one thing. It's an objective function that optimizes for this. Like, I want this. And even if it's if adding the customer or the person who's using it in the loop might make it more tailored to what the person needs. But at the end of the day, it's still an objective function that's given this, choose for me this, minimize the time you spend outside, minimize this, and then so yeah, that's how he looked at it from the point of this particular case, as opposed to how are we humans going to change over a longer time scale.
Okay, so the thing is, you call it an objective function, and you would assume the current mechanism insurance companies, the formulas that they use to calculate insurance costs are objective. It's purely a business. But oftentimes we see a lot of biases that come into these functions that are meant to be and designed to be purely objective, have a lot of inherent bias. Like, for example, it was shown that a man in, I believe in the UK, when he applied for insurance with the name Muhammad, his insurance premiums were like 100% higher. So I, I think, as you mentioned before, you also have to be conscious in the ethical and the biases we put into these systems, and we shouldn't look at them as objective because they're not. They're designed by humans.
Yeah, that is true. There is always be a bias that's based on how something to always be cognizant of how the function itself is created. Maybe the word objective, it can mean it's probably more of a goal than a reality.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Abdul.
And Gideon has a question.
Yeah, there was something, I think it was Nanda who was speaking to about the developers and the politicians. And I was just wondering if like, as the whole point of AI is for the system to learn, right? So would we legislate the developer, or would we legislate what it's learning? And how would we do it, right? Because I could, as an example, I think Microsoft had done something like ChatGPT some time back, and then it was exposed to Twitter, and then people taught it to be racist and all those things, right? So, like, from a social point, right, it's not Microsoft's fault that the system became racist. It's the people's fault. So, like, how is that even like meant to be handled? I know there's no answer to that. I was just bringing up a comment.
That's it.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to look at things. How do you limit what your model has access to? Or yeah, it's an interesting question. I'm also curious as to what will happen to hobbies. Let's say something like motorsport. With AI going into driving, and you have more self-driving cars, and maybe to some level some automation. Would rallying be the same? Would using an AI while you're rallying be considered doping?
I think
it's
the answer
really-
to this is if you look at the diamond industry, because you can make a lab grown diamond that's absolutely flawless, and at 1,000th of the prices are mined diamond. But people don't want the lab grown diamond. They only want the mined diamond, even though it's flawed
Mm,
and it's 1,000 times more expensive.
yeah. What's the
So
manufactured diamond called?
they would want real humans.
Yeah.
It's
Zirconium or something.
I'm not sure what it's called.
Yeah, but that's true. That's true.
The ChatGPT also got political. There was a discussion on Reddit over the weekend. People have already made it political.
Is it left wing or right wing? Most likely it's left wing. Because it's
It's a Democrat.
Yeah, I think that the best part of the presentation was that it's so
Oh, can't hear you. Oh,
that
it's just me.
because maybe it's just me. No, I was talking about like the part where I think Timothy said that the social aspect is the hardest part, because we will always find ways of making it worse.
So one of the discussions or viewpoints the book gives is so like for the example of self-driving cars, is looking at it from two viewpoints. One, should you proceed cautiously? Should we proceed cautiously, or find a way of how you can accelerate development? So like in the example you give, how can you build roads? Can a city or a country invest in smart roads and go bullish on that road? Because if they decide that they're going to make that investment, some of the obstacles will be overcome. Yeah, so it's a trade-off between both. Do we?
and maybe another thing is when we talk about. Go ahead first, Gidi.
No, I was just saying about the cars. Let me stick to my old school car. My the AI could deny me access to my own car. And what if I'm being chased? I do not have time for a face scan when I'm being chased by thieves. So no, thank you.
But I think the problem with us as tech guys, we tend to try to solve many issues with tech when the solution is a non-tech option. For example, this self-driving car issue. Yeah, you're trying to make safer vehicles that transport you to a place and you don't have to pay attention to it. Yeah, that's already solved with trains. That solution is already solved with trains. You don't need
That's
a
true.
car to drive you.
That's true.
So I think
That is
going
very
forward,
Like, wow, that's serious. Yeah. No, it's not about it that way.
There's already high-speed trains.
Even another thing is also it looks like the people who build, you're already in another like social class. The problems are different. So you think about mobility of money, there's a lot of jam and all that. But I don't know why also these technologies, they don't really care about the people, like eliminating hunger, poverty. Like we are accelerating, yes, with the AI and the GPT-3 and all that kind of stuff. But how will GPT really help someone in Kibera?
Yeah.
That's another challenge here.
Access to food, health, medication, and education.
And that's the basic need.
Yeah, just basic needs.
Okay. Yeah. I think there is a chapter where they also discuss what they call plenitude. Plenitude being, I learned it's a word that means a world where there is plenty. There's plenty of everything. There's enough food. There is no drought or hunger. And how AI can be used to assist with that. Yeah, it also flew over my head, but that's another interesting topic. But yeah, there are many problems. I mean, even if we look at, say, smartphones right now, in the social class, one might be in, everybody might have a smartphone, but it's not yet. Not everybody has a smartphone yet. Most people do not have smartphones. Most people do not have smartphones. Yeah.
That's true. Okay. Are there any more questions or discussion topics as we wind up? Timothy, I have one question. In a single phrase, how would you convince someone to read this book?
How do you convince someone to read this book?
Yes.
I would start with the question, one, do you sometimes wonder where technology is at the moment and what all these fancy apps and tech that come up mean? This book will show you the capabilities of the current technologies that we have. You want to show you the capabilities of the current technologies that are out there. What are their actual capabilities? That's what it will show you. And it will be good to learn, because that way, in the near future, as things change, you will have a clearer understanding of how you can use them and even the issues and challenges that they pose. That was long, but
okay.
Yeah, so basically the capabilities, maybe let me try to summarize it. What this book shows you, the capabilities of the current technologies that are out there.
Okay. Okay. So, thank you so much, Timothy. We're almost at time, and I would like to end the meeting at this point. For a complete meeting, I would like to define the word gregarious, which I used to describe Timothy. Gregarious is a sociable person. It just describes someone or anything that's sociable. So that's what gregarious means. And that is our time. Thank you so much, Timothy. And we'll meet again next month.
Thank you very much.